Do you ever have an overabundance of jalapenos? You're not really sure what to do with them? Get tired of the same old pickled jalapeno recipe over and over again? Well, we're going to do something different today. To make Cowboy candy, the sweet eat that is amazing with crackers and cream cheese. The list of supplies you're going to need is, of course, 1 cup, a few miscellaneous tablespoons, teaspoons, so on and so forth, vinegar, and a mason jar. And I'm going to show you something cool with this here shortly. A slotted spoon that's seen better days. Of course, the battle tongs, wide mouth mason jars. I use the wide mouth, they're just a little bit easier to deal with. You can use the narrow mouths as well, but I prefer these. And for this recipe, you can actually do quarts of those, and it works pretty decent. It just seems like we don't go through them quite as fast, obviously. We don't go through the Cowboy candy enough or candied jalapeno enough to really need it in quart jars, so we just do the pints. You're going to need turmeric, which we get this from Rural King, and it's actually just turmeric. There's nothing else in here, so that's awesome. We're actually planning on growing turmeric. We just haven't got there yet. We actually got this garlic powder from Aldi's. Then you'll need celery seeds. We use the celery seed salt. It works just as good. And of course, sugar. This is going to be a sweet tea. And then the star of our show, about 3 pounds or 30-40 peppers of jalapeno. Now we jumped the gun on this. Step one for this whole process is going to be, of course, slicing these. I was working on tomatoes the other night and just went ahead and sliced them and then froze them. It doesn't hurt them. We've done it multiple times. It works out just fine. The fresher ones are a little more crisp, but the frozen ones do just as good. So we're going to get all this knocked out real quick, get this brine going. So step one is, of course, slicing up your jalapenos. Then we're going to go ahead and throw our jars, our new flats, and our lids in a nice bath. And then we're going to go ahead and check our rings and flats, which our flats are new and I already went through them. And we're just going to make sure there's no damage to the rings or anything. I only need 5 of them. Now this one's going to be a hit or miss for some people, but that's a little rusty, and so is the interior of the ring itself. I don't reuse these, but some people do, so that's going to be up to you. But me personally, I don't like reusing the really rusty ones. I think that whole handful is really pushing what I want to deal with. That one's not bad. The outside's starting to rust a little bit. We'll see. Once everything's washed, I like to go ahead and put my rings back on top of them just to make sure that I can count, which apparently today went well. There's been a few times where I've come up short, and I'm not a big fan of that. We're going to pop them all back off there right quick. We're going to start filling them up with water. Once they're full of water so they don't float, go ahead and fill your water bath in pan up to, so I like to do it about here. The little handle rings seems to be about perfect, because as you dump some of the water out of the mason jars to keep them from floating, that'll normally raise it up about the 2 inches you need to actually water bath these. So once all the jars are submerged, we're going to go ahead and set these right on the lids and the rings right on top. So that way, while it's boiling, it'll go ahead and sanitize those for us. But we're not going to let it come to a full boil while the rings and the flats are in there, because it can damage the actual seal. Once it starts coming up to a simmer, or I start seeing the bubbles forming on the jars and lids, that's when I pull them. All right, straight on the stove, as high as she'll go, so we can start getting that to a boil. Now it's time to start making our brine. We're going to start with a cup of apple cider vinegar. We'll crank the fire up on that. 3 cups of sugar. What's great about the ball is it has cups measurements right on the side, so we're going to go with a full quart of sugar. All right, 3 cups of sugar in. Now, before we start mixing everything else in, we're going to go ahead and mix the sugar in a little bit. You got to be definitely on this while you're trying to bring it to a boil. Scorch that sugar, it's not going to taste good. Get that mixed in there a little bit. 1 teaspoon of the garlic powder, that in there. 1/4 teaspoon of the turmeric, that in. Then 1/4 teaspoon of the celery seed salt. Give that another stir, bring that to a boil. Once you got a good rolling boil going, you're going to want to drop that heat down to a simmer and let that run for about 4 minutes. So it is 11:34. So we're going to let that simmer until 11:38. Make sure you're consistently stirring so that way you don't scorch it. I'm a little late, but hey, we're good to go. After I let that simmer for about 4 minutes, we're going to go ahead, take our jalapenos, pop those little suckers open, drop them right down in there. I know that doesn't look like a lot, but trust me, it'll work out. We're just going to mix those around. As these cook down just a little bit, they should fall below the brine. Once you see it come to a boil, you'll be ready to rock. Our jars and lids have officially reached the temperature where you can see those little bubbles. That's when you want to pull them off there. We're about to reach a boil with the jalapenos. We're going to go ahead, pull our jars. We're starting to get a good boil going there. Always make sure to set them down on a towel. That's the way there's no cracking. We're going to do like we normally do. I always forget to remind y'all to get one of those fancy jar funnels because they are amazing. Then we're just going to take our slotted spoon, start filling the jalapenos in. Got a good little push down in there. Give ourselves about an inch of head space. Time to pull the speed round. This pan is a little bit warm. Just putting that out there. You just want to dump enough juice on them to get it up to that 1 inch head space. Grab the next one, inch head space. Right there on the brink. I knew I had a little bit extra brine for a reason. Now before this gets too hard, you want to throw it in the sink and start filling it up with water. Throw your funnel on in there as well. Spare jar, slotted spoon. That stuff starts getting hard. It's pain to get off there. We're going to throw our rings on, finger tight. So you can't really tell, but that's got a good boil going to it. I went ahead and took the empty jars that were already washed, sanitized, so on and so forth, put them back in there so that way there's not a lot of clanking while this is boiling. Oh boy, shouldn't have done that with my fingers. Oh, right where I want to be. All right, we're going to go ahead and let them run for 15 minutes. After 15 minutes, go ahead and pull them out. Always set them on a towel, that way they don't get shocked. Let them cool down. You should start hearing the pings. Once it's completely cooled, pull the rings off of there. So that way you can do long-term storage, because if you leave the rings on, they can actually reseal themselves.